Hey there, welcome to my studio. I'm Emily and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I'm so grateful that you're here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about different types of watercolor paper and why I believe your paper matters. There's different situations why you would use one kind over another kind, but I want to share with you the way I use watercolor paper. I'm going to tell you kind of what types of watercolor paper there are, what's in certain watercolor papers, and why I believe 100% cotton watercolor paper is the paper of my choice. So if you're interested in all of that, I hope that you'll stick around and let's just go ahead and dive in. Okay, so the first things you want to consider are acid-free, and you want it to be 140 pounds or 300 GSM. The reason you want it to be acid-free is because it will prevent deterioration of your paintings and help to just maintain the integrity of your painting. And then you want it to be at least 140 pounds because then it will withstand more layers and more water. So those are two things to really remember just right off the top. And then there are different finishes as well. So there's cold pressed, which is what this one is, which means that it has a texture to it. It's kind of hard to see probably, but it's rough. And then these are a couple of the paintings I've done using cold press. There's lots of layers. So you can see that I was able to build up. She's on cold pressed. You can kind of see maybe the little bumps that kind of show through. This was lots of layers as well on cold pressed. And then this one, we're going to talk about black paper in a second, but this one is done on white cold press, but then I decided to trick you and it's actually got a black border painted with gesso. And I'm going to show you a test of these after we kind of talk about them for a minute. And then there is hot pressed, which means that it's smooth. So the finish doesn't really have any bumps. It's very smooth. And these are a couple of paintings I've done on that. This is very smooth, not a ton of layers. I did this for Yule. And then this was for Mabon or Mabon, however you want to say it. And she's also on hot pressed. And again, not very many layers. These are actually little cutouts and die cuts. And same with this, also on hot press, but not a lot of layers. And I even brought in a little bit of colored pencil. There is also extra rough, and that has a lot of texture to it. I couldn't find my painting. I haven't used this as much. I couldn't find my painting that I used to create with this paper. But this is a really cool one, especially if you want a lot of layers and you want it to kind of diffuse and see some texture. They also come in different sizes. These are 9 by 12. This is 26 by 36, which is kind of weird. You could do it and then cut it down and put it in a frame. And then this is black cold pressed Stonehenge paper. It is 300 GSM and it's 9 by 12. It does not withstand a ton of layers either. It's not 100% cotton. I don't know exactly what is in it, but I love to use the black paper with metallic paints. They really stand out. So I did this for Halloween several years ago. And then these feathers. It was really cool. And you can kind of see the shimmer of the metallics. So those are super fun to use. And then these are kind of the more inexpensive. I don't want to say cheap, but they're more inexpensive. And the time I think to use these is when you're really learning. It's good for practice, for testing techniques. Gives you a chance to kind of gain confidence before you use the other papers, which can be a little bit more pricey. Worth it 100%, but when practicing, these are great alternatives. The reason that these aren't as nice is because they're not 100% cotton. So they're actually filled with cellulose or wood pulp, just other fillers, so that the paper doesn't absorb the paints or the water as much. It kind of sits on the surface. So I will show you an example of that as well, but then they also come in different sizes and different types. So this would be considered more of like a loose paper. All watercolor paper comes in these different kind of styles. You can also get a block of paper. So it's glued around all the edges, and then you would just use like a knife or something to go in and cut around the edges, but it keeps your paper kind of taped down so it doesn't get as warpy. And then this is just a larger size, and this is also like would have filler. It's not a great It's not 100% cotton. This is kind of what you would get at like Hobby Lobby or something like that. But again, it's super great for practicing. You just can't do a ton of layers on it. And so if you're using the loose paper, I've talked about this before in my videos. I like to tape my paper down. And what I use, I put a border right around my actual paper using an artist tape, or you can use washi tape. It's just not as adhesive, so it won't really rip your paper. Although I do tend to still use my hairdryer to put a little bit of heat on it first real quick, and then it loosens the glue, and then you can just tear off the tape super easy. But to tape it down, I just use masking tape. It's a lot stronger, and then it really adheres to my board, and then I get a lot less warping. Now, when you're using 100% cotton paper, if you do get warping, you can actually put a piece of fabric over it and iron it because it's literally 100% cotton. Other ways to kind of reduce warping is you can use a spray bottle. You would just spray on the back of the paper and then kind of hold it down, and then you can hit it with a hairdryer. You can also just put them under a big fat honking stack of books and that can also help flatten them. And then I want to show you one more type. So you can also get them in journals. The watercolor paper journals tend to also be more of like an intermediate grade paper, so it's going to have some fillers, but again, great for working out your paintings, techniques, trying new things so you can gain more confidence. This is one I got. Jenna Rainey's an amazing watercolor artist, but this is her little book. I practiced a little bird. I don't even remember what kind it is, but this has like a medium roughness, so but it is just a fun little book to practice in. Don't know what size that one is, but this one's just tiny, and it's actually, I didn't think I was going to like it, but it was super fun. Just going in, not worrying about, you know, making mistakes, just trying silly, just fun little projects to kind of work out what I might want to do on a bigger painting. So those are some of the little things I did in there. And then this was one of my tarot journals, and I really had fun exploring with this one. This is my Queen of Hearts. She's done in watercolor along with some pan pastels. And let's see, my little Taurus girl, she's watercolors. And I was able to do some decent layers with her, but again, not as much as I would be able to do if it was 100% cotton. And another one, I ended up bringing in some color pencils to kind of add a little bit more depth and dimension. And then this also, I was able to do pretty decent with some layers, but I brought in liners and other things just to kind of add a little bit more depth. But these are so amazing. Like I said, it helps to gain confidence. This was just a fun leaf I was messing with at an art retreat. And this is on paper that's not super great, so I couldn't do a lot of layers, and you can see how you can almost see through the paint. That's what this paper is going to do. Let's see. She's done with watercolors. I couldn't do a lot of layers. Let's see. She's watercolor and her hair is acrylic. This is great for acrylics. It will withstand the acrylics, which is awesome. She was done with marker, and I just want to point this out really quick. This paper is not meant for alcohol markers. It literally sucked all the paint out of the alcohol marker, so do not recommend. This was done with watercolor. This, I actually put graphite down first and then the watercolor, but you can still see some areas where it did not really withstand putting the layers, but I was able to kind of hammer it in with a little bit of a more creamy mix of paint. And let's see. Oh, this was watercolor. This is one of my favorite paintings ever. This was a lesson with Karen Campbell from Awesome Art School. Highly recommend. She's amazing. But this was watercolor, and I also brought in a little bit of color pencil, but this was not a lot of layers. So art journals, fantastic. So this is just kind of like regular paper. I mean, it's a little thicker than, say, copy paper. I already had some paint on a palette, so I'm just reactivating that to show you. So this would not take very much water or paint. It will kind of start to seep through on the back. I'm going to let that kind of dry off to the side so I can show you that you would not be able to use a new layer. And this is the cold pressed 100% cotton. This is one of my favorite types of paper. And Arches is probably my favorite paper that I gravitate to towards the most. 12 sheets runs about $20 for 9 by 12, and then it goes up depending on the size. Great places to get it are Jerry's Artarama or Dyvicl. Obviously you can use Amazon. I try not to use them as much as I used to. So let's see, this is a great one for layering. So you can kind of put down your first layer. I'm actually gonna make that more of a wash, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more water to it. And I'm kind of rinsing my brush and then dabbing off the extra water, and then I'm gonna go in with some more of that color. And you can kind of, it's called drop in, where you can bring in some more paint while it's wet and it'll kind of balloon out, which is really pretty. And then you can even go in with some darker and it will withstand those layers. So I'm also gonna let this kind of dry off to the side for a minute, and then we'll come back in and I'll show you how you can put some more paint over that. With this paper, it diffuses the paint naturally very nicely, which is one of the things I really love about it. And then this is the hot pressed, so it's really smooth. This one I love too, but you can't get the natural diffusing as much. You kind of can get some more harsher lines if you're not careful. So I'm going to go in with a creamy consistency like so, and then I'm going to get water on my brush, and then I just added a little bit more water to the paint that was on my brush. Rinsing that out a little bit, dabbing off some of the water, and then I'm going to go back in with some more creamy paint, and then I'm going to kind of drop that in, and it doesn't really balloon out as much, so you'll kind of get a harsher line even around the edges. Now you can combat that by taking a brush with just a little bit of water. Let me zoom in and just softly go around the edges, and then that'll help it diffuse. You always want to just have the tip of your brush on the edge that you want to diffuse naturally, and then you can just keep rinsing your brush off, kind of dabbing off any extra water, and then just run it around the edge there, and it will help it diffuse a little nicer. So we'll let that dry for a minute. This is 100% cotton, so this can be layered. It behaves a little differently than the cold pressed. And then this is one of the mid-grade cold pressed papers that does not allow layers all that much. So I'm gonna go in with a little bit of a wash here, just added a little bit more water. And then I'm going to go in with just a little bit of a creamier consistency, and it will balloon out a bit and diffuse okay, but it will still dry in a weirder way. But I'll show you also how it's harder to create layers with this paper as well. So I'm going to dry these really quick off camera, and I will be right back. So you can see how they all dry a little bit differently. You can really kind of see through the way this one, it just doesn't kind of suck in as much of the paint. This one did a little bit more wherever I put the more creamier consistency paint, and then the same here. So I'm going to go in and put a little bit more of a layer. This is that hot pressed smooth paper, and say I want to layer with a different color. I'm not getting this wet again. I'm just going to go in with another color. I can go in with a little bit more green as well. And then I'm just going in with a kind of a damp brush to diffuse those edges a little bit. And you can also just mix those right on your paper. But if you put too much water, it will dry weird. It just won't accept as much water or paint as the cold press. But the hot press is really nice as well. And then this is the cold pressed. And you don't want to move the paint too much when you add more, because it will disturb the layer underneath, but you can add way more layers when it's the cold pressed. You can drop in some more paint, and it just diffuses a little bit nicer as well. But this is a paper I definitely gravitate to when I want to create a lot of layers. And this is that more mid-grade paper. This one, even if you're trying not to, it will disturb the paint underneath. It's just not gonna kind of absorb that paint, like I said earlier, or the water. So it kind of just sits more on the surface more because of that cellulose or the wood pulp. So it will dry weird, and you just can't layer it like I would like to. So those are the things to remember when it comes to all those papers. And so whenever I film videos, I'm almost always filming on the cold press, but I think I might branch out and kind of show you some more ways to use the paper. And then as a bonus, I'm going to show you how to lay down some of that metallic paint on the black. So this is one of my well-loved metallic paint sets by Dyvicl. I don't know. One thing to remember, just on a side note, when you're using metallic paints, is you need to make sure that they're very activated and very stirred up before you put them on your paper, or you will not get that really metallic-y look. There's also glitter watercolors, which are really cool. These are so much fun. This is just a pretend flower to mess around. So that's purple, and then you can stir up some more. And you can use regular watercolors as well. A lot of times I'll mix those sometimes with the metallics just to get a little bit more of a bolder shade, if you will. Dropping in some more of the paint. You can add stem. That's really thick, but that's okay. This isn't based in reality necessarily. So there you go. And again, you can dry this and you could add some more paint on top of it. So that is a wrap on the paper. I will have the information that I went over today in my description box, as well as the types and brands of paper that I discussed, and kind of highlight the ones that are my favorite. I really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know your favorite watercolor paper. I'm changing my post date to Sundays at 1 p.m. and I generally post 2 videos a month. If you're interested in more watercolor videos, be sure to click on the above playlist. And take care of yourselves. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.